Okay. All right. We are now looking at Genesis chapter 4 again. We started this last week. We did the first part of the story of Cain and Abel. I want to put it out to you here if you can remember how that story flows and the order of it. So I don't know if anybody wants to give that a shot of reciting the story of Cain and Abel, how that goes. Anyone? So, all right.
Well,
Go ahead, Bob.
Cain and Abel both brought an offering before the Lord.
All right, we'll come back before that.
Before that,
Who is Cain and Abel? Who are they?
Adam and Eve's sons.
Yeah.
And there was some jealousy between them because Cain's offering to the Lord was not accepted, and Abel's was. So Cain decided to knock off his brother.
That's a pretty quick summary. Yeah, that's the flow of it. Let's talk about the big questions here is why was Abel's offering better than Cain's? What was the difference between the two?
It was a blood offering. Cain worked the ground, and Abel was a shepherd, and Abel's offering was his firstborn sheep. So it was giving God from his first, and it was also a blood offering.
Yeah.
And so God reprimanded Abel and said, just learn from your brother. Why was his good?
Yeah, since he talks about so first thing about Abel's offering was we said it's a blood offering, so he offers a sheep, and that had come into it before. After Adam and Eve sinned, God covers them with animal skins as the first, in a sense, death that happens is that animal that God killed to cover Adam and Eve. That's the first death mentioned, although it's I should say implied. It doesn't say he killed it, but you understand that he did. Abel, same thing. Now he offers an animal like God does. He is like God, and he is in line with God. Let me put it that way. Whereas Cain's offering was of the ground, and the one thing we knew about the ground at that point was what was said about the ground.
It was cursed.
It was cursed because of sin, right? So we have that part of it here. So nothing wrong with bringing the fruit of the ground, but there's a much greater difference between the two. And then the second part was what is said about Abel's that is not said about Cain's. It doesn't say that Cain brought trash. It just says he brought some of the fruit. Whereas Abel, it emphasizes two things. That you mentioned the first thing of the firstborn, but there was something else that it mentioned about that. If you remember what it was. It was the fat portions as well.
Oh yeah.
He says the Lord he brought the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions, the best, not only the best of the flock, but the best of the best to the Lord, showing his faith and devotion to the Lord. That's why the Lord is pleased with Abel, because it's a faith offering. And ultimately it's not the offering itself that matters as much as it is the heart that offers it. Like we mentioned before, it's like, when you're I'll give another example is if your child comes and makes a little drawing for you with crayon on a piece of paper and gives it to you as a gift, you value that like it's the Mona Lisa, because it's the heart that is being displayed. Not that paper's worth anything, or the drawing. You couldn't take that and sell it for anything. It's worthless on the market, but to you, because it's an expression of his love for you, it means the world. And so you put it up there, and if you had to choose between that and the $1,000 oil painting in your living room, the oil painting's out the door. It's not the offering itself, it's the heart that offers it that matters. And Cain is clearly, his heart is being revealed, because Abel, it seems, is offering the best out of gratitude and of love for the Lord, what do you suppose is Cain's motivation in offering?
Just to give something.
Obligation.
Perhaps obligation, or perhaps he's offering the way that the pagans always offer. Why do pagans make sacrifices to their gods? Do they love their gods?
No, they're trying to get something from
They
them.
want stuff, right? Yeah, exactly right. They want stuff. You sacrifice to Zeus because you want rain. That's how it goes. You know, it's been a little cloudy here. We want some, you know, we're getting sick of the weather in the area. It's freezing cold. And so we're going to make a sacrifice to Re, the god of the sun, and maybe he'll come through for us. It's all motivated by selfish desires, which is why idolatry is the religion, the natural religion of man, because it's a purely selfish religion. There's no love for the gods. They don't care. They only what they can do for you. And I think that's where Cain is right now, as he's angry, not because he displeased the Lord, but that there was no regard for it. And the Lord warns him, he can get this right. He doesn't seem to care about the relationship with the Lord at all. And he describes sin as, the Lord says to sin, you know, Cain, sin is crouching your door, and you need to battle it. And he doesn't. It's another fall. It's very similar to the curse, if you remember. So after Cain kills his brother, how does it go? What's the conversation that happens here? Can you remember that, how that goes? Let's read that again. I think it's a helpful one. Bob, Thomas, would you get that for us? 8 to 16. So this is Genesis 4, 8 to 16. Yep.
Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive with a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Okay, great. So you may have noticed, again, this is like a replay of Genesis 3, the fall of Cain, how it mirrors the fall of Adam and Eve. It starts with his, the tempter coming, sin, crouching at your door, just like that serpent coming and tempting him to this. Cain, like Eve and Adam, give in to that temptation, kill the brother, and do that which is forbidden of them. Well, then we have this, after the sin, there's this exposure now, and there's the Lord saying to Cain, "Where's your brother?" Just as he said to Adam, "Where are you, Adam?" And then we have this dialogue, but you'll notice what's interesting is that what was Adam's response when God said to him, "Where are you, Adam?" What was Adam's response to God back then? Do you remember?
He blamed his wife.
Actually, it was before that. The very first thing he says. You're gonna turn it to you, Teresa. I can't hear you.
He said he was hiding because he was naked.
Yeah, he acknowledges his nakedness and shame, and he's hiding. Cain is a shameless man. There is look at what's his response when the Lord says, "Where is your brother Abel?"
What am I, my brother's keeper?
Yeah, I don't know. Am I my brother? He flat out lies. I don't know. And then he has this cynical response. Am I my brother's keeper? Like he's not, is he really my responsibility? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Like he's a keeper of sheep. Am I his shepherd? What's going on? You know, it's really he's a shameless man. There's no sense of even a humility in this, where he's broken in any way for his sin. And now the Lord comes and says, what have you done? Your brother's blood is crying out to me, and now you're cursed. And so he brings this, the curse. Before he cursed the ground, now he's going to curse Cain from the ground, so that his whole livelihood is taken from him. He will never have success working the ground anymore. It will not yield for him. It won't just be hard, it'll be impossible. Yeah, go ahead.
So Pastor Michael, even after, excuse me, Adam and Eve fell from his grace, he allowed them to stay in the garden and you were allowed to go in and out of the garden at will?
No, they were cast off from the garden. But they were still, I mean, the garden was a plot within the land of Eden. So that was taken from them, and the tree of life was taken from them. So that garden part of it, God's presence with them in Eden. But now you're going to see Cain going further away from Eden. Eden is paradise. Eden is still. So things are starting to decay. So it's like a corpse. It really is. When someone dies immediately, you know, we even say at their funerals, oh, they look so good, right? So, right? They've been, you can maintain a level of attractiveness and beauty even when you're freshly dead, but over time it becomes a rotting corpse. And so death has entered because of Adam and Eve. And so it's bad, but you really see the decay begin severely with Cain now. The violence, because what Adam and Eve did is like you watch that and you're like, oh, that's a temptation, and they shouldn't have done that. But we could all see ourselves doing exactly what they did. But now Cain is a level of, the man's a terrorist. The man's flat out evil. And there is to kill your brother. I mean, ponder that for a second. As much as your siblings drive you crazy, the thought of killing your brother, but no other reason than you're just filled with rage and fury and jealousy. That's a depravity of another level. And it's only going to get worse. That's part of the story, is we're seeing the decline, not just the fall of man, but the decline, the decay of man going forward. And every story is going to get worse. So by the time we get to the flood, you'll be like, thank you, God, for putting an end to this. So Cain now needs to be a wanderer, and but you'll notice even with the punishment of Cain, there is the mercy of the Lord. Just like with Adam and Eve, he curses them for their sin, punishes them, but he also shows them mercy at the end and covers them and with proper clothing. And they go off, and it's going to be hard now, but there's still hope. There's still hope. With Cain, even to Cain, he shows mercy in putting a mark on him. What was the point of the mark? What did that do?
So that nobody will touch him.
Yeah. Again, this is the Wild West back then. There's no law enforcement. The only way to deal with a murderer is to kill him. And
Pastor, would that have been the first human death, Abel? Or we don't know that.
Well,
I guess the reason I'm questioning is, did Cain even have an understanding as to what he was doing?
Yes, he certainly did.
Yeah.
And it's again, you'll notice the story begins with, let's see, in the course of time, if you remember.
Yes.
So we're talking many, many years later. So there is no, it's a lot of things are happening in the world that we have no knowledge of. They are just, I mean, Adam and Eve are pumping out babies left and right, And those babies are growing up to be men and women who have their own babies. And death is in the world already. People are dying and living. We don't know how long. That's the key word, is like the course of time. That could be 100 years.
We can be pretty sure that they're eating animals at that point, so they know what killing it does.
Yeah, yeah. They are. Yeah, it's tricky right now because he doesn't give the go-ahead to eat animals until Genesis 9. But even so, you're probably right. They probably are. Everything's changed. Death has been brought into the world now. And so, yeah, I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I think that's very clear. But you're going to find out that Cain knows a lot more than you think he does. And that the people back at that time probably knew a lot more than even we know. And here's the first proof of it, which is our passage today. This is 17 to 24. All right, we need someone who likes to read ancient names. Any volunteers on this one here? Okay. All right,
Well,
I'll
I'll do it,
Jack.
but I won't get it right.
All right, Jack, give it a shot.
Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch.
I'm going to make it a little bigger for you here.
Okay.
Okay. There we go.
Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. When he built the city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mahujael, and Mahujael fathered Methuselah, and Methuselah fathered Lamech, and Lamech took 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. Oh, the first one was Jabal, and this one is Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the lyre and pipe. Zillah also bore Tubal Cain. He was forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, 25, 20, 23, and 24. Yep.
Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is 7-fold, then Lamech's is 77-fold.
Okay. All right. Well, first thing we have is Cain. So this is after Cain's banishment is what's happening now. And say again?
They all seem to have many wives and concubines. I thought God wanted it to be one man and one woman. Was it different then?
Well, that's interesting you bring that up. This is the first mention of 2 wives.
Mm.
And that's part of the reason it's mentioned. You're absolutely right. God made it very clear that the man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, not wives, and the 2 become one flesh, right? That's very clearly laid out. And now you have the first breach of that plan. And so it's told that way, not as a sign of approval. It's told because it's showing how depraved humanity is becoming and how far from God. So that's the thing about the narrative stories. Just because it's mentioned in a story, it doesn't mean it's approving it. It's just telling you what happened. It assumes that you have been paying attention and know what is pleasing and displeasing to the Lord, so that you by the time you get to Genesis 4, you know what God's plan is for the marriage. And when you read about Lamech, you're like, that's not right. That's
I
exactly
thought Abraham had many wives and concubines.
Abraham had Sarah, and then later on, after Sarah dies, he takes another wife, Keturah. I'm trying to think, did he have other concubines?
Hagar. What about
Yeah,
Hagar?
Hagar.
Well, Hagar was, yeah, he had her for that moment. You know, we're skipping way ahead. We'll take care of Abraham later on.
Okay.
Well, may I
Yeah.
just say that I thought early on, when this was only the second generation, perhaps it was in God's plan to have more than one wives to populate the earth, no?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
Okay.
not. There's no reason for it. There's no reason. You can populate the earth with one wife. You don't need to have a million wives. And the
Okay.
problem with it is, you know, what happens is in societies where one person has multiple wives, you know what that means? That means there are a whole bunch of guys who don't have any wives. Because this guy's taking them all. And that's what's happening in these poor countries where only the rich can have wives, and the king has 15 wives, and rich people have multiple wives, and the poor people can't afford them. And so they don't have wives. And they have all these broken homes and orphan kids, because it's very dysfunctional. So no, that polygamy is an invention of man, just as divorce is. It's like, however, just as a note, you know, God allows for divorce, if you remember in Moses's law, specifically
Without-
because your hearts are hardened. So divorce as a process was given to minimize the damage of sin, to help keep it controlled. It's not the plan, it's not the best. It's like the lesser of two evils. So you have in Moses' day, you know, a guy's going to leave his wife. He's determined to leave her because he's hardened of heart. But that's going to put her in a bad place. And she's going to be vulnerable. And no one's going to want her because they think she's still married to the guy and she's not free. And so Moses said, okay, if you're going to do it, at least give her a certificate of divorce so she can be free to find someone else and be taken care of, right? That's what Jesus says about divorce. He says it was not God's intent in the beginning for divorce, but because you're hardened of heart, because there's no faith here, he allows you to do it this way. And same thing with polygamy. It's like, it's not the plan, but in some situations, you know, there's a hardness of heart, there's a desperation, and it's a corrupt society. And if this is the only way this woman can find protection is by becoming the second wife of a guy, that's better than being on her own in that society.
And Michael, I thought also that if a woman were widowed, because in that culture, she needed quote unquote a man to protect her, doesn't the word say at some point her husband's brother is allowed to marry her for the protection?
Oh yeah, that was sort of standard that the among the Israelites, especially among the Israelites, where it was very important to maintain the tribe and maintain the offspring. The brother was supposed to marry the widow. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, the polygamy, it becomes to our attention because you're thinking of David and Solomon, who took many wives. But that wasn't standard practice. They were kings. And that was really for political reasons. And it was not condoned by God. But that was sort of standard practice of kings, to take multiple wives so that you can have political alliances. It was kind of a,
Even in Austria-Hungary, while they were not polygamy, Marie Antoinette was given to King Louis, but he was only a prince at that point.
Yeah.
So the two countries would not fight.
yeah.
If that
yeah.
makes sense.
So it's, you know, it's life is messy, as you know. We've all been around long enough to know that. We're not kids in Sunday school. You know, that life is complicated. And you know, there's grace in all of it, but sometimes it's like you can't. Somebody said you can't unscramble eggs. You know, it's like the eggs have been scrambled here. Sin is into the world, and everything's affected by it. And sometimes all you can do is just try to minimize the damage. So regarding like, hey, you know, just to skip ahead, you know, Abraham and Sarah, they they do the Hagar thing. That's common practice back then because having offspring is life or death. It's
Mm.
not like today where you can have the option of not having kids. You got to have kids. You need them. And so when Sarah realizes that she can't have them, it was common practice to give your servant to your husband so that you could have kids through her. That was her plan. It wasn't a romantic sexual affair. It was simply, we need a son and I can't give it to you. And so that's why they're not harshly condemned for that.
Mm.
That was sort of, he wasn't being unfaithful to his wife when he did that. He was kind of working within a broken system that gives you trouble and pain. But there you go.
Are you
Mm.
speaking about Abraham?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the only thing about Abraham is that Sarah didn't believe God. And yet John the Baptist's father, when he didn't believe God, he got punished. But Sarah, for not believing God, didn't really get punished.
Well, I would say this. Sarah did have faith, and God did not say, when she offered Hagar, God had not told her that it was going to be through her. All God had said at that point was, Abraham will have a son.
Oh, okay.
He didn't say it was through Sarah. So after 25 years and you're 90 years old, you
Mm.
might start thinking maybe it's through somebody else, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And so that's what she's thinking. And then only after that does God say it's going to be through you, Sarah. And she
Wow.
laughs, but she does believe, and she does get pregnant. So that's a whole nother story. We'll get to that later on. So I would say, yeah, we're gonna the narratives that we read are not moral tales that are going to say just because someone does something in a narrative doesn't mean that it's approved by God. God has told us what his plan is, and you were correct to notice that, Teresa, that he's made it clear what marriage is. And so when you read about Lamech here, something's amiss, something's very wrong here. Because even Cain only has one wife. Cain knew his wife, and she gives birth to Enoch. Okay, so Cain's banishment. After Cain's banishment, we'll start there. So Cain.
That's the same Enoch that was.
Go ahead. I can't hear you, Jack. You had a
That's the same Enoch that was Noah's grandfather.
different one.
Okay,
There's a different Enoch. Yeah, Enoch and Lamech too. They're going to be names that are similar, but they're the same names, but it's a different person.
gotcha.
Yeah.
There's several Bobs.
Yes. So Cain knew his wife and bore Enoch. So we're going to go through his lineage here. So we have Cain, Enoch. Who's after Enoch?
Erad.
Erod. And then Mehujael.
Yeah.
And then Methuselah.
Yes.
By the way, Becky did a great job reading for us. Thank you.
Yes.
And then we have Lamech. Okay. All right. And then Lamech, he'll have a couple of wives. We'll get to them in a second. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So first thing is about Cain. It just says that what is Cain? Let's talk about Cain. What are we told about Cain in this? Oh, shoot. In this context here. He
Knew his wife and she conceived.
Okay, so he knew his wife
Mm.
and she conceived. Now, the common question we get all the time is, where did Cain find his wife?
Mm.
Well, she had many children, didn't she? I think they were all brothers and sisters back then.
Yeah, it would have been a sister or probably a niece or something like that. That would have been his wife. He would have had Eve had there were many children, and they would have been off marrying each other. So you're going to have brothers and sisters getting together, and they're going to have kids, and then cousins and nephews and nieces and so forth like that are going to get together. So there's plenty of people on the earth, and he finds one of them, and knew his wife, and she bore Enoch. So now this line continues here. What's the next thing it says about Cain of what he does?
Built the city.
Yeah, he built a city and named after his son.
Enoch.
So we'll say this: he built a city for his son. This is the first city.
Mm.
Enoch is the first city that has ever mentioned in the scriptures. And so immediately, what are we thinking about cities when we come to this point here?
Well, I'm wondering where it's located.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know.
East of Eden.
Somewhere east of Eden. Yeah. So, but here's the thing: is like that's why I said like the ancients. You know, they have those ancient mystery shows where you have all these things, the mystery of the pyramids and the mystery of all these civilizations that were so advanced back then. And the reality is, yeah, they were advanced. Cain was able to build a city. He's not a cave dweller. He's not some Neanderthal. This is the first son of Adam and Eve, and he's building a city. There are many Jewish stories about how they believe that it was the fallen angels who gave this knowledge to them to do this. And that was sort of what the forbidden fruit was all about, was the gaining quest for knowledge, to know the good and the evil, to know these things. And many of the fallen sons of God, that's how they tell their stories in the apocryphal books, came and gave special knowledge to kings and to great people, so that these kings were inspired by spiritual beings to start civilizations. Yeah, that's the theories. And there's actually it seems somewhat consistent with what we read in the Bible.
Mm.
Do you have a question, Teresa? You look like you're going to say something.
I was, but you answered it.
Okay, good. All right.
Well, the other thing that strikes me about this is that Cain would have to get into something like that because somehow he's got to get food and he can't grow it himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So he needs to work around things, and so now it's getting people together in a city, and you're now sort of living off of other people's labors as you're going through there. So now to Enoch was born Irad. Nothing else is said of Enoch. Irad, Mahushael, and Methushael, until we get to Lamech. Lamech's an important figure. What are we told about Lamech?
Took 2 wives.
Took 2 wives. Now, I want you to notice something here. Just the way it's phrased, took 2 wives. What was said about wives before? About Cain and Adam? Go back. When we hear word wife, we've heard it before. The first
Cain
time,
knew his wife. What?
yeah, Adam knew his
Okay.
wife, and she conceived. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived. Lamech took 2 wives. There's so much wrong with that. So as opposed to Adam, who and even Cain, who knew their wives, Lamech takes. And where have we heard that term take before? Where have we heard that phrase?
When they
They-
took the fruit,
Exactly. They took the fruit. You're going to hear that phrase again and again. They're going to take things that are not theirs to be taken, but they take it. Even, it doesn't use the phrase, I don't think, but, Cain takes his brother's life. Eve takes the fruit and gives it to her husband, and he takes it. And that phrase of clearly Lamech is doing something here. He's doing something forbidden. And also that he took 2 wives. So that it's, marriage is one man and one woman becoming one flesh. There's no intimacy in Lamech's marriage. There's no union with his wives. He just takes them for his purposes. And even how he speaks to them, we're going to see that too, coming one. All right. Let's talk about Lamech's wives. So how can we break this down here? So Lamech, first wife was
Ada,
Ada,
Ada. Lamech and Ada, and what is told about them? They,
Had a son.
yeah, their son is Jabal.
mhm,
And what is what is noteworthy about him?
father of those who dwelt in tents and have livestock.
Okay, father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. Who is that referring to? Who are those who dwell in tents and have livestock?
Nomad,
they were nomads
Yeah, these
for
are
the most
nomads.
part.
And then they also have another one. And
Jubal.
Jubal, who becomes the father of the musicians here, right?
Yeah, Uzziah.
Okay. All right. So that's Lamech and Ada. They have two boys, Jabal, who becomes the father of the nomads, and Jubal, who is the father of the musicians, those that play the lyre and the pipe. Okay. Now we have the second one here. Lamech and
Zillah,
Zillah. And now who do they bear?
Tubal Cain,
Yeah, they bore Tubal Cain. And what's he noteworthy for?
forger of instruments of bronze and iron.
Yeah. And what kind of instruments we talking about? Bronze and iron instruments.
Horns.
Tools.
Yeah. Father of tools. What else might you make with bronze and iron?
Weapons.
And weapons. So we have the industrialization, the innovation here. There's a lot of creativity here. They're noted for the things that they do and the works that they do, and that's their legacy, their accomplishments here. And then we have the sister of Tubal Cain is Naamah. Okay. Not sure why she's mentioned, but there you go. Okay. All right. So that's Lamech and his boys. Now I want to pull back for a second, and we have Lamech's song. Remember Adam and Eve, after God makes Eve, we have the first song sung. It's Adam's song about, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken from man. Remember that back in chapter 2. Now Lamech has a nice little song that he sings to his wives. And what does he say? Okay, let's read it one more time. Carol, would you get that for us? Just the song there, verses 23 and 24.
Sorry, the phone is on.
Okay. You make somebody else read it?
I think I can read it now.
I'll make it bigger.
Verse 23.
Oops, I lost it. It always does that when I make it bigger. It just jumps on me. And I never know where it goes. It just kind of, it's like a mystery thing. It just like transports you to some other part of the text here. Let's right there we go.
Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold.
Okay, great. So Lamech says to his wives, hear me, listen to what I say. You know, this is by the way, this is the poetry. This is how you know it's a poem. It's not just indented, but there's the parallelism where we say the same thing in a different way. So he says, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. Same thing, right? And then I killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. Same thing, just repeated. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold and Lamech's is 77-fold. So let's talk about that. What's he singing about?
He's saying that he's killed somebody. He gives his reason.
Yeah.
But then he turns around and what sounds to me like he's saying that, well, if you took revenge on Cain, you would be punished sevenfold. Well, if you take revenge on me, you'll be punished 77-fold.
Yeah. So if what's really interesting, first thing is I think he's the first gangster rapper here, as he's thinking about just killing a man for striking him, you know. And then he says, if Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. All right. So a couple notes about that, of Cain's revenge. What was Cain's revenge about when it said Cain's revenge is sevenfold? In the story of Cain and Abel, when God says, if anyone strikes Cain, he will be, what does he say? Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold, right?
Right.
Who says that?
God.
God says that. So the idea is that Cain's revenge will be from God. For what? Who will avenge Lamech?
It's like he's telling his wives they have to do it.
Perhaps, yeah. Will be from, in this case, because he killed the man. Why did he kill the man?
Because he wounded him.
Yes, what do we call that?
Self-defense.
No, not necessarily. No, not
Revenge.
I don't know.
revenge.
Revenge.
Revenge will be from him. He's
Yeah.
boasting about his revenge already.
Oh, yeah.
He's saying basically, look, this is the pattern I'm following here. Cain will get, venge. He's so godless. He doesn't say God will avenge me.
No.
He says Lamech's revenge will be 77-fold. So basically, you strike me, I will kill you.
Mm.
That's the 77-fold here of vengeance.
Mm.
It's
But
no.
don't we have the right to defend ourselves?
This is not a case of self-defense. He kills a man for wounding him. The implication is it's not where he's being attacked and he ends up accidentally killing him. He kills the man.
And did he even say he was wounded, or was it he just struck him?
He struck him for wounding him, but basically the man hurt him.
Yeah.
And now he's getting back at the man. It's vengeance. So
Mm.
self-defense is trying to prevent harm from the other person, to keep them from hurting you and your family. So you're defending yourself in that moment. The Bible totally approves of that. But vengeance, it does not. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So they had a law. They have an interesting law in the book, so that if someone breaks into your house, according to the law of Moses, I think if someone breaks in your house and you strike them and kill them, you will be found innocent because you're defending your home. But if you kill them the next day, it's murder. Okay? So because at that point, it's not self-defense, it's vengeance. And that's murder. So if someone breaks into your house and you're defending your property and they're attacking you, yeah, defend yourself. And, if you got a gun and you know how to use it, That's legitimate, and our laws recognize that too. But if someone breaks into your house and steals something and you go and hunt them down and kill them, yeah, that's murder. That makes sense? It's a big difference, big difference. And so Lamech is about, that's murder. He's following in the pattern of Cain here, and he's seeking vengeance on this person who wounded him in some way. And so he's glorying. That's why it's a song. It's like he's not just telling something, he's reveling in his status as the avenger, as the one who's going to go with violence and not allow himself to be struck down or wounded or hurt in any way. So it's a really interesting. So you come to this place and you see in Cain you have sort of the bud of evil. In Lamech, you have the full flower now coming out there. But what's interesting about Lamech is, and his family, is I want you to notice how accomplished they are. The kind of things that they invent and work with, and they have great legacy. And so you see, this is sort of the mark of evil. What's fascinating about the Bible is someone like Lamech in the ancient world would be an absolute hero. They would love him. Anybody that can take 2 wives, that's impressive. And then he can beat up anybody and conquer them, and his family are all successful and great. These are men of renown. They are the mighty warriors. They're the greatest. In the rest of the world, Lamech would be an absolute hero. In the Bible, he is an absolute wretch. He is depraved and wicked. And that's something you're going to see throughout. It's like the earth, when we get to Noah, is filled with violence, and you have the mighty men of renown during that time, and the Nephilim, and all these great ancient warrior kings you write books about, but in the Bible's language, they're all condemned and damned. And this is the way of death and misery. Even though they are heroes, they're all workers. What's interesting is when we get to Genesis 5, we're going to compare that lineage to this one, and you're going to see the remarkable difference is that from Adam to Enoch to Noah, like, let me take, for example, Enoch. Lamech is the 7th in the line from Adam to Lamech. On Seth's side, Enoch is the 7th in line from Adam to Enoch. And so Enoch and Lamech are the 2 marks of them. Do you know what's said about Enoch? Do you remember in Genesis 5? Do you remember what it said about him?
Walked with God.
He walked with God. That's it. And God took him. He didn't taste death. It says nothing about his accomplishments, about his family, about anything that he did, any victories, anybody he conquered, nothing. He walked with God, boring. And God took him. He didn't taste death. It's faith and humility versus the works and the pride. And you can clearly see who's who. And it carries along the Cain and Abel story, because Abel, he pleased the Lord. We don't know anything about this man except that he loved the Lord and offered a good offering, and he was killed. Cain, we know a lot about Cain now. He builds a city, fathers a family. He's a real can-do kind of guy, and but he's damned. So even from the beginning, you're starting to get a sense of what is pleasing and inspiring in the world is also oftentimes offensive to God. And you can see it today. Right now we're going to be coming just a couple more days, folks, and we enter into, you know what June is now, right?
Pride Month.
Pride Month, right? June is Pride Month. You get a whole month of this now. And here we are celebrating pride. When you think about that for a second,
Mm.
encouraging everyone to be proud, be proud, be proud, be proud. The
Not
scripture-
everyone.
What's that? Not everyone. Yes. But the scriptures tell us about pride. Pretty clear. Pride comes before the fall. The
Mm.
Lord opposes the proud. Think about that. The Lord opposes the proud,
Gives grace to the humble. Mm.
gives grace to the humble. And yet this world is so depraved, it's calling people to be proud, to embrace that, and to exalt themselves. And he says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Pride comes before the fall. I mean, word after word after word. It's so countercultural. And even these stories here, these ancient tales would be told by other civilizations, but in their civilizations, Cain would be the hero. Abel's the chump. Cain's the hero. Lamech's the hero. Even the serpent would be the hero. That's how the world sees things. And that's why our faith is so different from the rest of the world.
Mm.
So we'll stop it right there. I think it's a good place to stop because we're going to get into Adam and then Seth and that whole lineage. So we'll pick that up next time. So great. Let me stop.
It almost feels like all the bad guys are like really prolific and what have you, and the good guys are dying young. It's like, no wonder by the time it got to Noah that he just, God didn't want anything to
Yeah,
do with this
yeah,
anymore.
What was that Billy Joel song, right? Only the good die young? What the one?
Yeah.
Right. That's true. That's true. That's true. You know, but that was the prophecy. It's the son of the serpent versus the son of the woman. And the son of the serpent is always the aggressor, the more powerful one, the more clever one who gets the first strike in, but his destiny is to be crushed. And the son of the woman is the humble one, the more compassionate one, the one who is the gentle one, who is going to be attacked, and he's going to fall first, but he will rise. And so that's how it goes for us. It's like the way of faith is that. And so when Christ comes, he doesn't come as the son of the serpent with great power and might. He comes the son of the woman, humble, meek, and lowly, and offering himself as a sacrifice for sins. And then he rises and crushes the serpent's head. And that's the path we're going to see. That story is going to be repeated again and again and again. You're going to be sick of it by the time we get through Genesis. How many times you see that story, that pattern play out for us. So
Not feeling being like God is something to be grasped.
yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So, all right, let me stop recording here.